Hello all, welcome to another series of lecture. In the previous lecture, we have discussed the mainstream theory of IR like realism, liberalism, and in this particular theory, we will be discussing about the Marxist theory, which presents a different outlook of IR, and it derives its idea from the concept of or the work of Karl Marx. Before starting this lecture, I am quoting from the Karl Marx, who wrote that philosophers had only interpreted the world, whereas the real point was to change it. So, Karl Marx was a German philosopher, and he was unsatisfied with the existing societies, and he wants to bring some kind of changes or the solution to the society which has been facing some kind of problems. And that's why he argues that philosophers also need to bring changes, they also need to provide some kind of solution. Okay, so the problem which has been facing by the societies. So in this lecture we will be discussing about how like Karl Marx wants to bring changes, or he wants to he wants to bring solution, so the problem which has been facing by the societies. And the Marxist ideology derives its idea from the Karl Marx, who presents the scientific study of IR, which is completely different from the traditional theories, that is your realism and liberalism, who supports or to maintain status quo. But Marxism wants to bring radical change in the working of international system. So that's why it has been emerged as a very powerful dominant form of social theory. And Marxist ideology has been dating back to 1848, when Karl Marx and his co-author Friedrich Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto. But it became dominant after the disintegration of Soviet Union. So disintegration of the Soviet Union led to the winner of capitalism in the world system, and Marxist theory heavily criticized the concept of capitalism because capitalism creates a unequal equality in the system. Okay, and according to the Marxist theory, First World War is not about the power politics, it is all about the competition between the bourgeois class and the proletariat class. And this bourgeois class always want to search for colonial resources and the markets. So Marxism interprets the world system through the prism of historical materialism, in which political events can be interpreted through an economic prism. And the guiding principle of Marxism is class struggle, which creates two distinct socio-economic classes within capitalist economy. So first one is your bourgeois classes on the one hand, and another is your proletariat. And Marxism is also a significant example of international political economy, and it focuses on the relations between politics and economics. So according to Marxist, economics also determines your politics, and this theory also signifies the example of international political economy, and it also presents the international system on the basis of core country is known as your rich and the poor country is your periphery. So the struggle is always developed between this class conflict between the core and the poor countries. And this Marxism offers a strange and unsettling view of IR, and it rejects or criticizes the liberal and realist theories, and it derives this idea from the Karl Marx. But the Karl Marx didn't express the international context, but he only confined with the domestic context. But the concept of this international concept of Marx, Karl Marx idea, has been developed by Lenin in his book Imperialism and is the highest stage of capitalism, who put focus on the international dimension of capitalism. And he has also analyzed interaction between politics and expansion of capitalism. So in order to understand the Marxist view of IR, so we need to understand basic concept of um, basic concept which has been given by the Karl Marx. So first is your base and superstructure. So Karl Marx has given this concept of base and superstructure. So base is your economic or material aspect which is always determined to your superstructure. And what is exactly the superstructure is your family, culture, belief, philosophy, law. They are the superstructure according to the Marx. And this economic base always shapes and maintains the superstructure. And what exactly the economic base? So economic base is made of mode of production, and the mode of production is your made of through means of production and the relation to the production. And what is means of production? Through which you can produce, for example, tools, machines, industries. So they are the means of production. With the help of this you can produce something. For example, if you want to produce wheat, so for that you need land, and land became the means of production. Now again, relation to the means of production, how you relate with the means of production. And in this context, when you own it, then at the time you became a dominant class, and when you don't own it, at that time you become a subordinate class. Okay, for example, if you want to grow wheat, so for that you need land. If you own a land, then you become a dominant class. If you don't own, then you become a subordinate class. So this is all about the material base or mode of production according to the Karl Marx. And this base always shapes the superstructure, and superstructure maintains and shapes your economic base. So on the basis of economy, you can develop your religion, belief, philosophy, law, media, etc. So this is the concept of base and superstructure. Now the origin of class. So origin of class always lies in the economic, and economic is the engine of history according to the Marx. And what he also wrote, that the history of hitherto existing society is the history of class struggle. So whatever the history up to now is all about the class struggle, and it is not struggle about the abstract ideas. And this struggle is basically derives from the economy or the material interest and resources. For example, in the slave society, so the masters and slaves, so the conflict was occur between the masters and slaves in terms of economy. Feudal society, lord and serf. Capitalist society, capitalist workers and capitalist and workers. So he gave more emphasis to the material conception, and this material production is the basic human activity. So all men always need what? Material production. So material production which include food, clothes, shelter. So these all are include the material production. So in order to produce material production, so there is something called mode of production, which is made of relations of production plus forces of production. So in order to produce something, you need means of production. With the help of certain tools, you need means, that is your raw materials, tools, equipments. They are the means of production. And social relations of productions. So social relations of production means, if you own it, then you become a dominant class. If you don't own it, then you become a subordinate class. And the class conflict led to the origin of classes. And this is all about the economic base or the mode of production according to the Karl Marx. And this led to the class division. Okay, so in every society, in slave society, feudal society, capitalist society, there is a class conflict between the haves, which is known as a dominant class or the bourgeois class. They are the masters, feudal lords, capitalists, and they are always in less number. And on the other hand, you have a have-nots or the proletariat class, which dominated by the dominant class. They are subordinate class like slaves, serfs, and workers, and they are always in a large number. And the concept of historical materialism, which Marx like mentioned in his book Contribution to the Critique of Political Economy, and this like the theory historical materialism looks at the change in society in terms of changing material conditions. So Karl Marx derives this idea from the German philosopher Hegel, who gave more emphasis to the ideas, and in place of ideas he gave more emphasis to the material conditions. According to the changing material conditions, there comes the changing in the stages. So in this like theory, it contains two interrelated aspects. What is materialistic conception of society, another is evolutionary of conception of society. So the production represents the material factors and society changes with changing material factors. So according to the Karl Marx's historical materialism looks at changes in the society in terms of material conditions, changing material conditions, how this like material uh, conditions change according to the time and situation. So while looking at the stages, so he also explained the primitive communism, where we could find there's no any kind of class division, but like gradually the accumulation of wealth was occurred, and it led to the like another stage, that is a feudalism, in which the class conflict was occurred between the lords and serfs on the basis of what material. And during the industrial revolution, so the concept of capitalism was came into picture. So where we could find the conflict between the bourgeois and the proletariats. Okay, and again like socialism, he also like given the concept of socialism after the capitalism, where all will be workers, or there will be no any dominant class in the socialism, all will be the workers. So again like he also gave the future stage, that is your communism, where gradually even workers will renounce their power. Okay, so in socialism, all will be workers, but in communism, this worker also give their power, and in the communism there will be no any class division. There will be classless and the stateless societies. So in all these stages, so changing in the material conditions is very important, and this is how like historical materialism has been given by the Karl Marx. And what are the core principles of this Marxist theory is your historical determinism. Okay, so classes are like there is a class struggle between the two classes, bourgeois class and the proletariat class, and the bourgeois class is your like economically dominant and exploited. Poor are your proletariat classes. And another like assumption or core assumption of Marx's theory is that state was created by the bourgeois owing class, or to safeguard or in order to protect and fulfill its interest and to oppress the proletariat, and like it served the interest of owing class or the dominant class. So that's why they want to wither away the states. Okay, because it creates like class division. So that's why like in the communism states there will be no any class division, so state will be wither away. So how do you like achieve this another state, socialism or the communism? So according to the Marx, like so the stages of socialism could be achieved through the revolution. Okay, so by bringing the world revolutions, so that could bring some kind of lasting peace. Okay, with the help of revolution you can wither away the class division. Okay, and in the communism there will be no any class division, there will be classless and the stateless society. And this Marxist approach has been divided into different types, like first one is wall system and the wall system theory and dependency theory. Second one is Gramscianism. critical theories and the neo-Marxism. In this video, we will be discussing about world system and dependency theory. So this dependency theory has been immersed in the work of Henri Gunder Frank, and there are various scholars like the Fernando Henrique Cardoso and Raul Previs, and it basically derived from the Latin America, and this provide instances from the Latin American countries to show that nations' own capital was not adequate enough for its overall economic development, and it concerned with how developing countries are dependent on the developed countries. So this theory analyze international politics concerning itself with the existing unequal relationship between nation states, between developed and underdeveloped countries. So these underdeveloped countries always have to depend upon the developed countries in terms of raw materials, in terms of manufactured goods, and that's why these underdeveloped countries always serve the interest of the developed countries, and they always need to depend upon the developed countries. So this is how dependency theory works. Okay, and underdeveloped and developed countries, the north is basically developed countries, and in the southern hemisphere the countries like African, so they consider as a underdeveloped countries, and this poor countries always serve the interest of the rich country. Now the world system theory is basically focuses on the structures and process, and it has been developed by the Immanuel Wallerstein, and it developed to analyze a post-colonial international order. So the roots of the theory traced back to the Lenin in his monumental work Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, and in this particular theory, Immanuel Wallerstein identified the dominant structure as the core, and then the less developed structure as the periphery. And tracing he also traces the emergence of capitalism in the 16th century, and he examines its evolution into third world capitalist system that contains core, periphery, and semi-periphery. So he also developed the concept of semi-periphery, which involves a mix of production activities, some associated with core areas and some others with peripheral areas. So semi-periphery, which is the misproduction, some of the qualities of the core countries and some of the qualities of your peripheral areas, and the core countries is your developed countries, and the periphery is your underdeveloped or the poor countries, and this your semi-peri, which comes under in between the core and the periphery. The semi-periphery is economically more developed than the periphery. For example, Singapore, Taiwan may be considered as a semi-periphery as compared to Bhutan, which could be treated as the peripheral states. And Wallerstein also argues that dependency situation of developing countries and regional class division are the direct result of the capital nature of the world economy and the economic exploitation by the advanced countries. So there is an interrelationship in the world economy. So the core countries is always democratic, follows the democratic government. They have high wages, import raw materials from the semi-periphery and periphery country, and they have high investment and welfare services. And you have periphery, which is basically non-democratic country. Okay, we could find in the most of the African countries, and they export raw materials to both semi-periphery and core countries, and import manufactures from the core and the semi-periphery. Okay, finished product, and below subsistence and wages, no welfare services. And semi-periphery is the countries they also follow the authoritarian government, so they also export manufacture finished product to the core as well as the periphery. and they import manufactures from the periphery as well as from the core raw materials. They have also low wages, low welfare services. So how like this a world system, okay, process has been like they are interrelated with each other, and the core country always like they always want to dominate the other periphery and the semi-periphery countries. So this core country import raw materials from the periphery. Again, they out of this raw materials they produces the finished product, and again this finished product they used to export to the semi-periphery and the periphery country in a very high cost. So in that case, like core is always dominated the periphery and the semi-periphery countries. So like this core country, this is the diametric view of Western world system theory. So the core country high profit consumption goods uh, from the periphery as well as from the semi-periphery, and this periphery and semi-periphery provide cheap labor and raw materials to the core countries. So this is how like interrelated with each other. Now criticism. So there is a like though there is a relationship between countries are much more than economics. So Marxist theory only give emphasis on the economic activities, okay, material activities, but it is not about economic. There is much more than. So it has been criticized on this ground, and this theory is too simplistic, actor motivation on economic interest. So it is always revolve around the economic, and it is a too simplistic theory. It cannot cannot look other activities, okay, and that's why it is a too simplistic. And world systems in the classless society that Marx envisioned. So Marx is which given the concept of classless and the stateless society, but it is not possible. So Marx always envisioned the utopian society. It is not possible in the real society. And again, onset of the globalization, militarized foreign policy, imperialist rivalry to the dynamics of capitalism all exist contrary and get affirming what Marx said. So onset of globalization, this the theory which has been given by the realist. They want to maximize want to power maximize they want to maximize power through the military, but it is and this is not going through according to the Karl Marx. So on this ground, this theory has been also criticized. And Marxism as a school of thought is an economically deterministic approach to IR which focuses only on the class relationships. So Marxism theory only focuses on the economic deterministic approach to IR which focuses only in the class relationship. So for Marxist scholars, the interrelation national system is highly stratified and dominated by the international capitalist system. According to the Marxist approach, the social class, transnational elites, multinational corporations are the key actors of the world politics. So these multinational corporations, transnational elites, so they are the key actors in the world politics in order to dominate the subordinate states, okay. And for them, state is an agent of bourgeois and a means of exploitation of proletariat, and they viewed structure of international system as a conflictual which is based on zero-sum game. Therefore the ultimate goal is class interest and to bring the radical change instead of maintaining status quo, as a realist scholar claimed. So they all are the main contributors of Marxist approach. You can go through it, and thank you so much.